obviously now looking back, he groomed me. And for me, I always felt like this man's too important, I'm not going to be believed.
But at the same time, like, the person who you thought was showing you love was actually your worst nightmare.
We'll call him a family friend, I suppose, because he was a family friend at the time. He showed me an attention my dad had never showed me. I felt special, I felt wanted. It soon became hostile, and he'd start planting seeds reminding me of all this stuff he was taking me on and make me feel bad and make me feel guilty. All of a sudden one day, like, we were in his house, I was terrified. Like, I didn't know what was happening until it was happening.
How old were you at this point, Matthew?
10, 11, 12 to 13. I just became a very hostile, angry person. And some lad owed me 200 quid, and I smashed his teeth out with a knuckle duster. I burgled houses on Christmas Eve and stole Christmas presents from kids.
My house got burgled on Christmas Eve when I was a kid, and that was horrible, that.
I think I've done this as a coping mechanism, so people won't come up and talk to me.
This is like self-harm.
And I still get that fear. When I think about that, I still get that fear. No matter what time he got, I've got a life sentence for that.
So to date, we are joined by professional bare-knuckle fighter, Spider, aka Matthew Morton.
How you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm good, mate. You?
Yeah, great, mate. Great. Thanks for having us on.
You're welcome, mate. Anytime. Honestly, I know that when you initially reached out, mate, and you told us your story, I thought, this is one that I've got to share with people watching. The listeners and viewers, mate, the subscribers are growing and the channel's getting bigger now. It's still just a small platform, but we've had some unbelievable guests on, mate, with all different types of adversity that they've kind of battled and struggled to get to where they are. Your story is one of the top for me, mate,
Yeah.
just by the voice notes that we had back and forth. So, yes, you're a professional bare-knuckle fighter. What is your upbringing, or what was your upbringing like, mate?
So I'd say my early years were pretty good. My mum and dad were happy. We went on holidays. We did regular family stuff. My dad and my mum love them to pieces. My dad probably when I was a kid was a bit handsy and a bit angry, but I think given what he was brought up like, and given the circumstances in his life, like my dad's going blind, you know, he's developing MS, I think he was just very frustrated at the world. And I was quite a full-on kid. Like, I was very hyper, very into everything, and I required a lot of attention. Like, I didn't like being alone. I didn't like being on my own, so I required that constant reassurance, basically. And I think me and my dad clashed quite a lot. So, you know, sometimes he'd hit us, sometimes he'd hit, you know, he'd hit us with belts and stuff like that. But I don't think it ever did me any harm, because sometimes I probably deserved it. But I think he dealt with the situation the best way he knew how. Now, obviously, I think it's safe to say, and I'm going to say it now, like, I've been an addict or shown addict behaviours my whole life, right? So when I was a kid, if I was into football, I was addicted to football. It's all I talked about 24/7. And I mixed and matched with different things as a kid, and I threw myself all into it. Do you know what I mean? I'm very, like, ADHD structured like that. Now, my mum and dad split up when I was quite young, and they were always arguing. I think you get to a point in life where you just fall out of love with people, don't you? And I think, you know, them two just fell out of love. They didn't really get along. So when my mum and dad split up, I wouldn't say I was necessarily upset by the fact they'd split up. Like, you know, I got along with my mum. I liked my mum. I was like, at the time, I sort of didn't really like my dad, but more because I didn't really have an understanding of who he was, and I didn't really spend one-to-one time. He was always working away. When he was at home, he always seemed angry and frustrated. So when them two split up, I was quite happy. I was buzzing, but I think still, because my mum and dad had split up, it's still deep roots in a child, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like, I still went off and did stupid things and started hanging around with stupid people. Now, my mum was very close to a man, at the time he was chairman of council. My mum had worked for him for a very long time, and because I wasn't getting the attention from my dad once they split up, I always felt like my dad didn't want to spend time with us. Realistically, my dad was working, he was doing things, you know, like I always felt like if he wanted to get in touch with me, he would, and he's the parent, it's his duty. I shouldn't have to beg him for attention and time. Whereas like my sister and my dad have a really good relationship because my sister was very 50-50 with him, and like she'd ring him up, I want to come round, whereas I didn't do that and then blamed him for not wanting to see me. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So my mum put me like this we'll call him a family friend, I suppose, because he was a family friend at the time. She started like letting me go and do odd jobs with him around the office that he was working in and stuff like that. And I started getting into trouble at school, and I was fighting at school. I was misbehaving, so I was getting exclusion days where I was getting sent home from school. And my mum, obviously being a single mum at the time and working full time, couldn't afford to just leave work and come home and look after us. So I would get looked after by her boss, essentially, by this family friend. And for ages, he showed me an attention my dad had never showed me. He took me to events, he took me to car shows. He obviously, now looking back, he groomed me. You know what I mean? Like it was, I then seen him as my dad. He took over this father role in my life. And like when I was doing stuff on weekends, I was doing stuff with him. I was going to these places. I was seeing things I'd never seen before. Like, you know, like going to car shows and being VIP in the backstage and stuff like that. Like it was exciting for me because I was really young. Like, and then after a while, it started becoming more and more frequent, and I started calling him dad, like, you know, and I'm sorry to say that to my dad. Like, I was looking at this guy like he was my father. You know what I mean? Like, in my eyes at the time, I felt special. I felt wanted by someone I looked up to as a positive role model. And then as time went on, like I didn't really notice it at the time. He started putting his arms around my shoulder, and I just thought he seen me as a son. And I thought it was like affection a father would show a child.
Yeah.
And then it soon became hostile, and he'd start planting seeds reminding me of all this stuff he was taking me on and make me feel bad and make me feel guilty. And, you know, I used to get picked up by him all the time. We'd go let the dogs out. We'd go do stuff. So to be alone with him I wasn't scared. You know, I felt comfortable around this man. I really did. Like, I looked up to him. And then all of a sudden one day, like, we were in his house, and I felt a weight push me down to the floor. Now, I'd like to say, like, I was fighting him off and biting him and doing this stuff like that. I'd like to think now if something like that happened to me, well, do you know what I mean? I would be. But I was terrified. Like, I was, like, I didn't know what was happening until it was happening. And like, for a man, I think like you read about these people being abused, and you read about people being abused, and it doesn't register that it can happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm going to be honest, even after it, like I'll say it, and you know, like, I was, and you know, I felt this crushing weight on top of me, and still to this day, if I think about it, I can smell it. I can smell the same smells I could smell that day. I can feel the same feelings I can feel, and my heart still races, and I still get that fear. Mm-hmm. When I think about that, I still get that fear. And I'm not going to lie, like, I didn't really register I'd been abused. Even at the time, like, even though I knew I was being, and like, I didn't want this to happen. Like, I was a kid, I didn't know how to maybe process my emotion or process the thought pattern, or, you know, I've done a lot of research on psychology since, and I think a lot of what the brain's cognitive function does is it blocks out traumatic events. And even though it was happening, I was disassociating myself from my body. So I was trying to, like, put myself elsewhere. And I remember feeling, and I remember this day like it was yesterday. Like, after the first time it happened, I remember feeling guilty, ashamed, embarrassed, and really vulnerable. And that made me angry. And I remember afterwards, you know, like some of the stuff he was saying to me was like vile, you know, calling me disgusting, And I remember being dropped off at my mum's and him telling me, you can't say anything, can't, and I just sort of went in and carried on about my life like it was normal. I went in, said hi to my mum, oh, have you had a good day? Yeah, I've had a good day. And I remember going up to my bedroom and I'd like to say I just cried, but I didn't. I just got on with what I was doing. I think it didn't really register what had happened. I just sort of literally blocked it out. And then this became the norm every time I saw this person. Still showering me with gifts, still taking me on events and still doing stuff. And to the outside world, looked like he was a positive person in my life. And, this guy was a chairman of the council. Like, he ran charities. He had a PR company. Like, he was a very well-to-do person, you know what I mean? He'd often remind me of that. So then when I started, after about a year of it happening, and we're talking like, it wouldn't just happen at a house, like if I was in a car with him, he'd pull up on the side of the road, like take me to other houses, like I don't know, like his mum had a house in, he used to take me there, and certain parts of Cumbria give me PTSD just from being in there. Like I look back and I'm taken back to that day, or taken back to those days, and it wasn't till probably after about a year of it happening, I realised what was actually going on. Like I was being abused.
How old were you at this point, Matthew?
10, 11, 12 to 13.
You alright, people? Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Here's a random one for you. Most of you who are actually watching this episode don't actually subscribe to it, so just do us a favour, will you? Can you click the like button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss another episode, hit subscribe, all that good stuff, because we go up and down the country to try and bring you the best show possible. We're not messing around here, so please just show some love, will you? So were you going to school as well?
Yeah, like I was still going to school. I was acting out. Like I've been kicked out of 5 different secondary schools for fighting. I'd just been trouble. Like, and I'd like to say it was just at school I was trouble, but it wasn't. Like I was harbouring on to all this emotion that I didn't know how to deal with. I was having all this horribleness happen to me by someone I looked up to as a father. So that alone, that action alone, completely warped my sense of love and judgment and peace.
And even authority.
Yeah, like I had no care in the world for anyone else, even myself. Like, like I started going to school, started hanging around with people and like I started doing drugs at a young age. Like I was smoking weed at 12, and then at 13 I started taking I was smoking, I'd doing little bits here and then, and obviously like about 14 I become hooked on everything. But I was going into school and still trying to go about my day, and that turned me into a bully because I had a chip on my shoulder. And I've often, up until even a couple of years ago, I've always felt like the world owes me a favour. And I know that's quite a delusional thought to have, but I often thought that just because I've been through what I've been through, the world owes me a favour. Like that shouldn't have happened to me. So like now, like I can do what I want and not worry about consequences, because what consequences do I have to worry about? Like nothing's ever going to be as bad as what's happened.
Yeah, I get
like going out and committing crime, getting arrested, going like the possibilities of jail, or like my mental health was that bad, the possibilities of hospitals. None of that ever bothered me because it was just a means to an end. Like I had to do what I had to do, and I was doing things like I was going in school, I was bullying people. I was coming home and I was bullying my mum and my sister. Like there's been times where like, like at 13 I was out stealing cars, I was doing drugs. I was out getting locked up probably 2-3 times a week. My mum's at home worrying. And then when I was at home, and my mum's trying to implement like discipline, because obviously that's what a parent does. Do you know what I mean? My mum doesn't know at this point I'm being abused, so she's seeing all this behaviour and probably putting it down to thinking it was to do with her and my dad and splitting up. My dad become a bit more distant, I think, because he'd seen the relationship I was having with this man and seeing him take this father role. So my dad become a bit more distant. And because I was acting out at home, my mum become a bit more distant, and I was sort of more pushed in the direction of the person that was abusing me, which then in turn, like I was spending more time with him. I was having my life flipped upside down every time. I was coming back and in turn acting worse than I was before I went away. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
I was coming home, like, I remember times when my mum sat in the living room and I've been in my bedroom and I've heard her cry. You know, she grounded me. I've jumped out the top window. I've gone and thrown shit at her house. I've gone out. I've got arrested. I've been brought home by the police, or, you know, I've been out causing trouble, causing mayhem. I've been missing for days doing drugs, and she was always worried. So when she was trying to implement this discipline, I had no care for authority. Like, I didn't care what I was up to or what she was trying to do, where she was trying to protect me, and she's trying to protect me from myself. And I always pushed back against that. And as a result, I ended up getting kicked out of schools and moving schools. I remember at 13, my mum just, I think at some point, decided she couldn't cope. And probably because of the stuff I was doing, like, I was going home. I can remember one day, like, my younger sister's like idolised my younger sister Rebecca. She's a fantastic person, brilliant mum, really, really kind and caring person. And when I reflect on what I've done to her and my mum over my life, like, I always feel like a cunt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was times where, like, I've locked them in the house and then they've gone, I'm going to ring the police. And I've got all the phones. I've put them in the sink. I've turned the sink on. I've flooded the sink. I've made it incapable for them to get help. And I'm only 13, 14. I'm running around the house and I'm throwing things. I'm getting drugs off people and I'm stashing them in my bedroom, and my mum's finding them and not knowing what to do with herself. Do you know what I mean? She's past the point of, I think, being emotionally able to cope with what I was doing. And obviously at the time I was still being abused. I was still being abused, but I was still being groomed. To the world, it looked like I was just an ungrateful, horrible little.
Yeah, that's the thing, mate. I mean, first and foremost, Matthew, mate, I want to just say, fucking hell, like, thank you for sharing that, mate, because that takes, obviously, a bigger person to discuss and be that vulnerable. And sorry as well, because that's fucking horrible, and no one should have to go through that, mate. It actually, when you were telling us, it actually made us feel sick. And it actually flipped the perspective a bit, because I hate bullies. Everybody hates bullies. And the fact that you were one for a bit, you almost look at bullies and think, the bullies are the ones with the trauma.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying every bully. Some bullies are just dickheads and that's the way they are.
Yeah,
but,
of course, yeah.
But some people can flip out and act a certain way. Like, fucking hell, if that was happening to me, of course I'd be lashing out at everyone, like thinking the world owes me, of course.
I seen people having good lives.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to school and I was hearing people talk about how mint their mum and dad was, or how bliss their home life was, and they had this, they had that, they had this. And I thought, fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'll not lie, like, it's something I've learned now. Like, I'm not envious of someone now for having a good life. I think, fantastic. Thank God you've had a good life, because no one deserves to have a bad life. You know, I think ultimately bad things happen to good people and turn them into bad people sometimes. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't have an outlet for my anger. And mixed on top of that, I was doing drugs from an age where I wasn't properly emotionally developed. Probably the abuse has stunted my emotional development to some extent. And then, like, from 13, I was smoking.
Do you know when you're taking these hard drugs, mate, who are you doing them with at that age?
I was doing them with, like, 18, 19-year-olds.
Were they just happy to give
Yeah,
up for 13?
like, I think it was just the crowd. Like, I was going home and stealing money from my mum, and they were happy to hang around with us because I had money. And I've always been a bit taller. I've always looked a bit older than what I was. And I've naturally always just sort of... my granddad used to say something, right? He used to say, like, if you act a fool, you're actually, like, able to intercept information from people quite a bit better than, like... Do you know, because people just open up and they tell you stuff. So, like, I heard that from a very young age, and I just acted a fool, and I was always brought into these crowds. You know, I met them laugh, and I was joeying around for people, so I was dropping drugs off, and I was going in shops, I was doing shop runs, I was coming back, and, you know, I was doing my little drugs, and I was happy doing that because they were showing me this false sense of affection. So that was pulling me away from being abused, because I was out and about, and I was just going missing. The drugs were taking... My thoughts go a million miles an hour. I struggled to slow them down. And when I was doing drugs, it had, like, an adverse effect on me. Like, you see in movies, you see people smoke and they're all, like, jumping about and hyper. For me, it just shut me off. And I needed them to just shut off so I wasn't chasing the high all night. I never really enjoyed it, if I'm honest with you. But it was something that just came part and parcel with who I was hanging around with and what I was doing. And I think mix that with what I was going through, I just became a very hostile, angry person. And I spent my life then focusing on being angry and being hostile, because that to me was my defense mechanism. Like, I go out and I do drugs and I'd disguise myself around being this horrible person. And reality is, like, I'm not a horrible person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like now I do good things, I get good things back out of life. And I believe that's a good philosophy, you know, like I believe in God, you know, I pray every day. And before I believed in God, someone said something to me: if you don't believe in God, believe in good, orderly direction.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me resonated with me. So now I try and live my life on like a karmic value. But back then I was all over the place. And I think I was hurt that no one seen what was going on.
You can tell that though, because even when you were kind of with them lads giving you or whatever drug or whatever, you find that in gangs. You find that a lot of people who've got, you know, missing or absent fathers and stuff, they're looking for love ultimately and recognition.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, it is sad to have someone sit and tell us that, because it's obviously like, I've got kids and I know that I couldn't think of it. But at the same time, like, the person who you thought was showing you love was actually your worst nightmare.
Yeah. And essentially all these other people do when they're getting you into do drugs, they're grooming you as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, they're grooming you for a different purpose. And I was, at that time, I would say I was very susceptible to being, not being groomed necessarily, but I mean, essentially, I suppose, but like, I was susceptible because I felt abandoned by people that loved me. Like my mum put me in care when I was 13.
When she couldn't handle it all.
Yeah, and she couldn't handle it all. And, you know, the only person that come to visit me in care was the person that was abusing me.
Mm.
And then after a while, I ended up moving back to my mum's. And I remember being 15 and I come out about this abuse. I got.
Is that when the turning point was, at 15?
Yeah. Like, and what it was for me, like, I was bad on the drugs. So I was working cash in hand, just washing dishes and doing a bit of pot wash, like, you know, trying to earn a bit of money. And I was going out committing crimes, burgling people's houses, and just trying to fuel an addiction to keep this switched off. And I remember being at work one day, and I think it must have been on a bit of a come down. And someone I was quite close to, do you know, like, you get the dark humour jokes, don't you? And like, someone had made a joke about child abuse, and this was a man. Like, I don't, obviously, jokes are jokes. I feel like, you know, there's got to be humour involved in everything. Like, I often revert to dark humour probably as a coping mechanism. But I heard this, and something inside us I felt sick. Like, I felt really, really sick. And I remember I was going out with a lass at the time, and just like, you know, like quite a young relationship, and like just some bird I was seeing. And I remember, like, I didn't feel like I could tell my mum, not because I don't think she believed me, or I just felt like too much had happened. Like, you know, like, would have put me in, like, I love my mum to pieces. Like, she's, like, hands down one of the greatest human beings I've ever come across in my life. Like I love her to pieces. She loves me, and she's a good mum. She's a great grandma. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's a fantastic human being. At the time, I was clouded by a different perception. Like, I was looking through the world through these rose-tinted shit specs. Like, I was looking through the world from the perspective of a hurt child who, you know, like, I didn't realise why my mum, my dad, my family couldn't see what was going on. Like, I felt I didn't have to be able to, I shouldn't have to tell them for them to know this isn't me as a person. So I felt abandoned. And then obviously, like, going into care, like, I only seen that from my perspective. And now I'm an adult, I can look at things and empathise with situations and realise, shit, man, if I was acting the way I was acting and I was having to deal with it, I'd have probably done the same thing as my mum. Do you know, I think she was trying to get me out the town I was from. She's trying to get me out of Cumbria and get me back on a positive track. Just break away for a little bit, come back and be sorted, be better. And then, like I say, I come back and it carried on and it carried on. And I come out about when I was 14, I think I went to court after my 15th birthday. I think if I remember rightly, I was in a police interview room giving evidence the day before my birthday.
What was the actual first thing you said about coming out about it, though? Can you remember why you actually said, right, this is what's happened to us?
Yeah, so I heard this joke and it sat in my stomach and it sort of resonated. It was about like, do you know, like a family friend, like I think, if I remember rightly, the joke was, I'll abuse you so badly, you think I was a friend of the family, right? Which now, if I probably heard, I'd probably give a little snigger to. But at the time...
But you were experiencing it?
Yeah, I was experiencing it. Like, I was living that on a daily basis. You know, like we're talking like... I'm not just talking this would happen once a week. This was happening every other day or every day. And that for a child going through that, that's a lot. Like, that's a lot for any human to go through. Do you know what I mean? It's trauma upon trauma upon trauma. And the longer it went on, the more deep-rooted it got. And the more dysfunctional I became as a person. And I just snapped. I snapped. And I remember telling my girlfriend, and she, like, we were kids, you know what I mean? And she was like, well, I don't know how to process this information. And I didn't know how to process information. So I went and told her mum. And her mum said, you're going to have to tell your mum. So I told my mum. And then obviously, like, the police got called and, you know, we did interviews and stuff like this. And like I say, I think it was the day before my birthday. I remember being in a police interview room on video camera. I often it was different for me because I've been in police stations loads. Do you know, like being arrested and no comment. This was different. Like a part of me, and this is going to sound really weird, because I come up in the culture where you don't say anything to the police. You don't, you know, like you're a grass. You're a grass. And even giving evidence against a bloke who multiple times as a child, I felt like a grass.
Did your mum believe you when you told you?
Yeah.
Because you're a kid who's running around doing all this mad stuff.
I think a lot of people thought I was just trying to get out of trouble. And I was using this to try and, you know, like just stay safe and get on the right side. You know, I could then go into court and say, oh, like I've had a lot of people say that to me over the years. But she's my mum. She had to believe me, I think. You know what I mean? Of course. But I think in her head, she still didn't want it to be true. So she believed me, but she believed me with like a caution, and she believed me with love, and she took me to the police station, come to these rooms with us. But I think she didn't want it to be true. And I don't blame her, you know what I mean?
No, you wouldn't want to, you know what I mean?
So I think she was sort of praying I was lying, like out of badness, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think when, like her and her, like I sat in this police interview room, and obviously I'm sat in this room giving evidence, and my mum's on the other side of the screen listening to what I'm saying, do you know what I mean? And I'm doing it over video link because obviously I'm too young to be able to go and like they catch all this for video, so you don't have to go to court and things like that. And I remember it being a really traumatic experience, reliving it. Like I was having to give details about a man, and I was like over detailing, over explaining, and explaining every detail. You know, like where birthmarks were, do you know, like like the description of a bedroom and what was in these drawers, like what was in and around the surrounding areas, and it was for me like I was sat out my body. It was like I was in a different room. I was reliving it all. It was like a director watching a movie, and I was just reading off. Oh, this, and this. And after that, like it turned out, you know, the police had like 4 or 5 other people this had happened to 20, 30 years ago when he'd worked in a boarding school, and they'd recently come forward.
About the same bloke?
About the same bloke. And, you know, it turned out like, it was obviously an abuse of power. Like, you know, he was a chairman of council. At one point, he was a priest. At one point, he was working in a boarding school. He was fully taking advantage of what he was and exploiting children for his own gratification, essentially. You know what I mean? And essentially, you look at characters like this. So, like, look at people like Jimmy Savile. They do a lot of charity work. They hide behind their persona because the persona keeps them safe. And for me, I always felt like this man's too important. I'm not going to be believed. And like, obviously, rumours spread, don't they? So like, I try going back to me life, and rumours start going round. I'm the person this has happened to, and I'm going to school, and I'm doing this, and then I'm getting called a faggot, and I'm getting called because I was, oh, you let a man do this, you know, like kids are cruel. And like, I know this and you'll know this. We all know this because we've all been kids, and we've all been on the tail end of being cruel, or we've all been cruel. And for me, home just like I was living in at the time, and it just become the most unbearable place in the world for me to live, because I felt I was being talked about 24/7. And I've drifted right round Cumbria when I've been growing up. You know, like I've lived in Carlisle, I've lived in Maryport. I've been to schools all over Cumbria because I got kicked out. And I started not wanting to be in. My friend was living in Ulston, so I went and lived with him and his nana for a bit, and that got me away from the town. But we were living in a house, me, my mate, his cousin and another mate, and his gran was around, and his gran was lovely. She was, you know, she took me in, she fed me, she looked after me. That was the first sort of step for me for having like a bit of normality after all this, you know what I mean? But because his nan wasn't always there, like we took full advantage as kids do, and we were doing drugs in the house, you know, going out to parties, and I was doing like hardcore class A's and hiding it from my mates, like people my own age. I wasn't like, you know, I was going and sniffing with them and that, and we were drinking and that, but like I'm still sneaking off to the bathroom and doing and keeping it a secret, and I'm living my life day to day for addiction and hanging around with people to serve my addiction. So I'm hanging around with people that sell drugs, I'm hanging around with people that do drugs because they're friends and people of convenience, you know what I mean? Like at that time, everyone just become convenient to me. Like, oh, I can hang around with him, I'll get that, I'll do this, I'll do that, and I might have to go burgle this, I might have to go do that. But everything was just to fuel what at the time I thought was like a recreational party life, but it wasn't. Like, it was, like, looking back now, I realised I was working on, like, using it as a coping mechanism, very unhealthy coping mechanism.
What happened at the court case?
So he got 10 years for abusing me, but he made a plea, a plea deal. So like they suscepted some of the charges on him if he pled guilty. So he got 10 years for abusing me, and he got 4 years for abusing 5 other kids. But because of their, I think, prehistoric sentencing laws, they have to sentence you by the guidelines at the time. So he got 14 years in total.
Served 7.
Which...
Is he out now?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen him since?
Nah.
No. It's fucking crazy that, mate. These people should never be allowed out again.
Nah, and like you look at drug dealers, you look at people that go to jail for fighting, and you look at people like that, and they get loads of time. And I think about the fact he'll have pled guilty, he'll have got a third off his sentence, so it takes 14 years down to like 9. Do you know, 10 years?
Yeah.
And then you're talking out on good behaviour, and you're out in 5. No matter what time he got, I've got a life sentence for that.
No,
and so has everyone else that he did that too.
How long ago was it when you were right? How old are you now, mate?
I'm 29 now.
Because like you're still young.
Yeah,
I'm 36 this year. So even looking at, I mean, from when I left school, that's the same time as when you went through all that.
Yeah.
The same time's passed from me leaving school to what. Do you know what I mean? When I think about that, because it didn't feel like so long ago when I left school.
Yeah.
So when I think of that, it's like you're only 29, and obviously you're doing good things now, and like you're a respectable bloke. You know what I mean? You speak very well. You can tell you could have been out. And it's fucking horrible when you hear these things, because it's like just because of some
horrible
bastard, mate, is negatively fucking impacted your life. But again, the importance of having this conversation, mate, there could be other people going through it, and because of you, mate. And see, the thing is as well, you're full of tats. You've got an image where a lot of people probably think he's dodgy. You know, that's me saying it, because what do people say? Burglars, fucking tattoos.
Yeah.
All the usual bullshit, but actually the man who sits in front of us isn't all of that.
Yeah. Like I quite pride myself on being a respectful person. I think though, like I'll not lie, like I think a lot of the tattoos and stuff were done as like another coping mechanism.
Was it like self-harm?
Yeah, like a form of self-harm. Like,
if you don't know by now, I run a business called The Content PT. I create content for influencers, PTs, online coaches and fitness brands all around the world. So if you are someone who's in need for sexy content for your social media, or you really want to maintain a competitive edge in your industry, drop me a DM on Instagram.
I've talked about this with therapists. Like I used to slash my wrists. I used to like, you know, I've tried killing myself, like I unsuccessfully, obviously, because I'm still here. But I tried killing myself a few times. You know, I've been in mental health hospitals as a result of this. You know, I've gone through psychosis with drugs. I've got PTSD. I've got it used to be BPD. It's emotionally unstable personality disorder now. But I think I've done this as a coping mechanism, so people won't come up and talk to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, people look at me and they go, I'll just avoid him. And that kept me like a security blanket. Like,
yeah, I get that.
And then when I've been getting off my face and doing stuff and living my life and running riot, I've got faces, like tattoos on my faces. I've woke up after sessions. I've been like, what the fuck's going on here? You know what I mean?
So you got the spider ones, then?
Yeah, the spider webs, mate. Like, my mate who I'd worked with, I did resin flooring for a few years. And, you know, like, I've always sort of, even though I've been committing crime after work, I've always worked. Because I had 2 incomes to feed me addictions, you know what I mean? And I liked working, it gave me a sense of purpose. It meant I wasn't always thinking. And my mate, who I'd worked with for a few years, had been like, Matthew, you need to get away from where you're at and come to Manchester, and I'll keep you right. And I moved Manchester to get away from it, and I was sober for a few months, did a little bit there, but underlying issue wasn't the place I was living. The issue was me. Like, I hadn't dealt with what was going on. So it didn't matter what location I was in. I was still
yeah.
I was running away from my problems, and my problems were following us. And I was moving to places like Manchester. I've lived in London. I've lived in Durham. I've lived near in Seaham. I've always fell back into the same crowds I've always tried to get away from, because that's who I felt I needed to be. And I think, do you know, you'll have heard the saying, you are now who would have protected you as a child. You know, like, and I turned into the person I needed to protect me as a child. Like, you know, like, I was bullying people. I was going out and fighting. I was causing trouble. I was doing drugs. I was blocking everything out because I thought that's what I needed to do to cope with what was going on. Reality is, all them drugs ever did was cause me more problems. Like, you're trying to fix a problem with another problem.
Yeah. Well, even if you look at so even if you look at the tattoos, it's funny because you say even getting the tattoos kind of kept people away from you. But then that means you're not letting anybody else into your life. So then ultimately you're always looking for that person, that figure, that someone to... Yeah. But then you're keeping them away as well. So you're just doing yourself harm by doing that.
It's like an oxymoron.
It is.
Like you bring people close, but you don't want to be close to anyone. It's like, I feel alone, but I don't want anyone to talk to me. So
with the tattoos, I've never interviewed someone with a face full of tattoos.
Yeah.
With the tattoos, was that all like or did you actually want to be...
I like now, like, even now, I'll still go and get tattoos on my face. Like, I'm getting the Last Supper on my back, actually, at the moment.
The full shebang?
Yeah, it looks mint. But I like the tattoos. I've always liked tattoos. Like, I'll start getting tattooed at, like, 12-year-old. And then, like, at 13, 14, I had a tattoo on my neck. My mum was always going nuts. Oh, don't get this place, don't get that place. And that egged me on even more, I think, as well, you know.
I see.
And I ended up getting these spider webs when I was living in Manchester. I got these spider webs, and everyone started calling me Spider, right? And I just moseyed along, and like, I was always on the drugs. I was robbing drug dealers. I was going around causing mischief, and people just called me Spider, which was fine for me because it disassociated myself from my actual name. You know what I mean? Like, my name's Matthew. Like, that's my birth name, my biblical name. That's who I am as a person. You know what I mean? Now, for years and years and years, that's all ever people call me Spider, Spider, Spider. And when I got sober, well, when I started recovery. So I started recovery a few years ago, and I've done odd months where I've done 6 months, I've done a year, and then I've relapsed. Do you know what I mean? I've been strong now for a while. But when I got clean, I was like, I fucking hate this name, Spider. I hate being associated with it. Now, I started fighting a year ago. And that's all I've done. Like, I've been fighting my whole life. I've been having scraps and that, but like 30 seconds around the back of a pub or fucking 40 seconds in a car park's nowhere near like the intensity of being in that ring. And I remember as a kid, I did a bit of boxing, not for long, you know, a few months. And about a year ago, I thought, do you know what? If I go to the gym, I start going to the gym, start going on the treadmill, started lifting weights, and I thought, I started punching the punching bag, and I thought, do you know what? Feels good. I remember enjoying boxing when I was a kid. I've always enjoyed having a scrap and that. And like, considered myself pretty tough. So I thought, fuck it, I'm going to sign up for a fight. And I signed up to Paul Vennis, who, like, someone I absolutely idolised, not just for his fighting, but for his recovery.
Yeah,
that's a man I can listen to, and he talks sense. Same with Danny. Same with a lot of them. Do you know what I mean? They're all on their own recovery paths, and I think they all go down certain routes because it's a good release. And I signed up to a show that him and Ben Hatchett owned, Street Beefs, and I had my first fight in 4-ounce gloves. and I fell in love. I thought, oh my God, like the buzz, like I got a Tico in the second round, and I thought the buzz I got off that, I was like, fucking hell, this is mint. And I just did it just to prove a point to myself. Like, I'm one of these, like, if I set my mind to something, I hyper focus on it.
Was it almost like the buzz you were always looking for?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, like the training gave me a sense of purpose, and it gave me a routine, and the fighting gave me like, oh my fucking God, like this is mint. Like, this is mint. This is better than it felt round the back of a pub when I've won a fight. Like, whoa, all these people are fucking clapping, and like, I feel mint. And then I got out of the ring and people are wanting pictures with me, and I felt mint. Do you know what I mean? I like inflated me fucking ego, no end. Which, I'm not going to lie, wasn't necessarily a good thing, because I come out of that, and I was booking fights every month on all these small promotions, and I was going into fights, and I was thinking, oh, well, I won my last one, I don't need to train as hard for this one, and then I'd go and lose, then I'd train hard, and I'd win, and I'd inflate my ego, and I'd lose, you know, like I went on this cycle.
It might not have been a good thing in terms of your fighting ability, however, it's keeping you on a positive path regardless.
Oh, yeah,
and nothing, mate, you could lose the next 100 fights. It's never going to compare to what you've been through.
Yeah, well, that's,
you know what I mean?
That's the way I see things. So, like, I always look at things when people go, like, I've taken a lot of fights against people that I know. Like, I fought a lad called Alex Wilson for my debut on BKB. Guy's mustard, like, really close with Alex now, really good friend, spot on bloke. But the guy's boxed a very long time, and I've been boxing like 8 months. They were like, oh, will you fight him? And like, I was like, oh, pro fight, like signed as a fighter. Yeah, I will. Because I know in my technical ability, my boxing is safe to say pretty bollocks, you know, no, compared to like compared to people that don't fight, like I can have a do and I'm tough, like I'm durable, like I can take a fucking punch in the face and I'll stay stood. Like, my defense is, I'll have a brawl, I'll brawl you. I'm not a boxer, you know what I mean? Like, I'll have a scrap, and I try and make boxers come into having a scrap. So when I was put up against Alex Wilson, it was like I knew I was essentially out my depth in terms of who I was fighting. I knew he was going to outbox me, but I wasn't scared, because to me, I'm not scared of a lot of things, because the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and that's ever going to happen to me, has already fucking happened.
Yeah, exactly.
So nothing apart from being dead in the ground is going to be worse than that. And even then, when you're dead in the ground, you're off. You don't think about anything. Yeah, well, as far as we all know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's the thing though. So you've got to take strength from that. Do you know what I mean? And become that. Like, there will be people who listen to this. There will be people who watch you on your journey going forward. And obviously, I want to wish you all the best for that.
Yeah,
there's going to be people who are on that journey who are looking at you, and you are going to be that hope for someone. That's 100%. Mate, look at Paul Vennis when he was on the podcast. I had lads. A lot of people reach out to me saying, Paul actually saved me life.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, fucking hell, I just know this lad who can have a scrap. But no, there's an actual person behind the Paul Vennis.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And when you see that, you're thinking, fuck, same as you, Spider. Same as any of these people who, whether it was like an alias, the Spider thing, you're in Manchester, all that up, and you got the tattoos, and that was something you're trying to, that is still something to be proud of. All them things. On that journey, mate, and I want to ask you this out of pure curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm probably never going to get to sit down with someone who's been a burglar before, right? Yeah. I just want to know, how do you feel when you're burgling a house?
When I was off my head, I think.
Were you always off your head burgling?
I used to be, yeah, like every day.
Did you ever do it sober?
I've done bad shit sober, probably not. Yeah, I have actually. I've done it chasing my addiction. So I've done it sober, and I thought, oh fuck, I need to go and earn money. And like, I'll be brutally honest, after the fact, on the come down, I would feel scummy. Yeah, and I don't mind admitting it, because I think like everything's part of being honest now. Do you know what I mean? Like you got to live your life like that. Like, I've burgled houses on Christmas Eve and stole Christmas presents from kids. That's fucking scumbag.
You bastard.
Yeah.
You know why, mate? Because my house got burgled on Christmas Eve when I was a kid, and that was fucking horrible. That. Well, but no.
I'm glad I'm younger than you, mate, because I know it wasn't me. You know what I mean?
No, but see, because I just thought, like, because you hear about that shit all the time. But you think, how have they got the balls to go into someone, like, they never know which house they're going into?
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily even having the balls, mate. Like, you're frightened when you're doing it, but it was like, my addiction for me overfed everything. Like, at one point, mate, I'd have kicked my mum down the stairs for a fiver's bet. You know, like, and that's me being brutally honest. I love my mum to pieces, and sober, I have morals, and I try to live my life by morals. Second I get a drug in me, mate, or a drink, I become an immoral person, and I live my life on bad terms because I'm putting badness out there. I think that the world's very like, the universe is very like run on energy, and I think like the more shit you put in your body and the more like you treat yourself like shit. Like I've essentially been abused from start to finish in my life. You know what I mean? Like I've abused myself, I've been abused, and like it's something I've always known. So like when I was on the drugs, it was like, oh, I feel like shit and I feel shit doing this. But when I have that drug, I'm going to forget about it and I'm not going to care.
I wonder if like the drinking drugs or whatever, I wonder if you become immoral because of just the way you are. Because when you're sober, you've still been through them things.
Yeah.
So I wonder if when you say, if you have a drink or whatever, you just become a different person. Is that because you've got an addictive personality though? Or do you have an addictive personality because of the things you've been like?
Well, yeah, it's a hard one, I think. I've not got an off switch. That's my problem, yeah. So like most people, like, I'd imagine yourself, you can go out for a drink, you can have a couple of drinks, and go home at the end of the night and you'll stop. I go out and have 2 pints, I'm ordering bags of coke, I'm off on a 3-week bender, I'm spending every single penny I've got, I'm spending every single penny everyone else has got, I'm getting myself in that much debt, and then I'm going out and stealing when I can't afford any more. And then I used to go on these little things where like, fuck shit, I owe like 3 grand out, 4 grand out, and I'd go hiding, and then my mental health would get worse, and then I'd be sat on my own doing drugs, smoking, paranoid out of my mind, going into psychosis, thinking people are going to come kick my door down, and I live my life like very on edge all the time.
Mate, throughout your kind of journey and stuff, when you've done X, Y, and Z to kind of do what you need to do to feed your addiction and all these things, which I've never been in that scenario, but I kind of understand, like, someone just needs to get that fix, whatever it is. Yeah. You've mentioned, you'd have to kick your mom down the stairs if you had to. I know you would, thankfully it didn't come to that, but I understand the need of what you've wanted. How did you never end up in prison? Like, were you close to it?
Yeah, I've been close a few times. I've been remanded. But I always, it's going to sound bad this year. So like I've been remanded a couple of times and I've spent time behind doors, but then I've been found not guilty of things, or I've been moved to mental health wards. And then I've been sectioned a lot. Like I've spent a lot of time in mental health hospitals. I think I've been 8 or 9 times. And usually what happens is when I'm out committing crimes and I'm out doing stupid stuff, I'm off my head. But it's like I go straight into psychosis. Like I go straight into this paranoid, horrible, delusional state where I don't really know what reality is anymore. So then when I'm in courts, I'm like, and I'm not going to lie and make out like I haven't used what's happened to me as like a bit of a get out of jail free card, because I have, like I've sat in court and I've said, if you'd have gone through this as a kid, you'd be exactly the same as me. Truth and reality is of the matter is, yes, I went through a fucked up thing, and that's maybe led to a few fucked up decisions, but I've chose to stay on those paths I'm on. Like, I'm still my own independent person. I still know right from wrong. So I've chose to be on them paths, but I've like been like at points where I've been in court and I've used that to try and get myself out of trouble, and probation have been like, oh, look, he maybe needs a bit of counselling, he maybe needs this, he maybe needs that. We'll try and help him. And then there's been times where it's been like, you're not very well. You need to go to hospital. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I've spent time in like Averley Park in Manchester, that mental health hospital, Carlisle, Hadrian unit. I've spent time there a couple of times. Durham, at Lancaster Road. I've spent time in Foss Park in York. I've been sectioned up and down the country, and I always thought I was a lot iller than what I was. And then you go to places like that and you realise...
Because this is what I was going to say. So there's 2 ways I look at it, right? Because obviously there is people who've been through probably worse than you.
Yeah,
and haven't went down that path.
Yeah.
However, what I would say is, and not justifying any of your actions, I can't imagine I'd end up a full shilling. If I'd been through that, I'd want to lash out the world. And so thankful I've not had to experience that, but I can totally understand why you'd be the way you would have been. I get that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think anyone would disagree. Like, if someone's had that happen to them, then, you know, you are going to be like a bit fuck the world. Like, it is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
and you use that to your, as you say, we've been in court. Like, you're going to use things to your advantage because it's right. Well, I'm going to make this work for me now. Like,
and it's like I've done it throughout everything, mate. Like, you know, like even when I was an addict, like I've used what I've been through as a kid to blag me mum out of money.
mm-hmm.
You know, like I've used it to fuel my addiction. I've used it to get out of trouble. I've used it to try and benefit whatever situation I've been in, because like I often used to think, why shouldn't I? Like, I've been through it. Like, it's happened to me. You know, if it get me out of that, then I'm going to do it. Whereas now, I'm at a different perspective on life now. So like you know, I started going to church. I've started looking at God for answers and reflecting on my life. And I realise now I just leave everything up. I don't worry about things anymore. I don't stress about things. Like, I leave them up to God. And like, sometimes I don't understand things. I think, oh, why is this happening? But then I just ultimately remind myself, well, it's part of the journey. It's part of the plan. Like, I've been kept safe up to now. Yeah, I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. Tried killing myself a few times. I sort of feel like a cat with 9 lives. Do you know what I mean? I've done drugs. I've done drugs to the point where, like, you know, I've been in hospital and I've had seizures. And I'm not going to say I'm here for a bigger purpose, but I feel like I'm here for a reason. I'm still obviously trying to find out what that is. But for me, everything I've ever done has been an independent decision. And bad or wrong, like even the stuff I've been through as a kid, I can say now, honestly, has moulded me into the human being I am now. Would I change it? No, because I wouldn't know who I was as a person. I wouldn't know who I'd be.
And there's a whole load of people who would have ended up worse than you as well, and done worse things. Like, you've heard it, haven't you? People have killed people over what they've been through. So it's like you look at that. Before I get on to kind of the positive side, like where you go now in your journey, Matthew, with the kind of mental asylum. Are they called mental asylums? Are you allowed to call them
mental health hospitals.
Mental health, aye.
Secure units.
Secure units. What are they actually like for someone who doesn't know what? Because when I think of them, I know this could be my mind. They're fucking terrifying. The thought of that, like, what do you actually see? What are the? How are they?
Depends sort of where you're at.
Right. Okay.
What's going on? Like, I've been in like Hadrian unit in Carlisle. Staff are nice. Like, first time I went in there was on a mixed ward. So you were in there with boys and girls, and that was quite weird. Do you know what I mean? And it was quite chaotic because obviously you've got a lot of ill women, you've got a lot of ill men clashing together. You don't necessarily always get a quiet outcome. So then, like, over night time, you're up, you can hear noises. You've got people of different levels of sickness. Like, you go in there, you think you're ill, and someone's a hell of a lot iller, you know what I mean? And it's different stages. Obviously, they've got different wards where they try and move people onto, but like, to start with, like, you're quite mixed up, and they can be quite scary. They can be quite loud, anxious, and I think noisy is the right word, noisy and chaotic. But then I've been in hospitals, like in Averley Park in Manchester, in Wigan, where there's not enough staff. You know, they've got massive wards and they're overrun. You've got male wards, and I'm not saying the women don't do a good job on there, but like, you're on male wards and some of these men are like hostile towards the women, violent towards the women, and that's not nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
As a person, I'm not saying I've ever been perfect, because I've been a cunt during relationships. I've been horrible to people, but you look at it from an outside perspective, they think they're trying to do a job, but some people are at a level of sickness where they don't realise that. And different places have given me different experiences. I've been in quite quiet hospitals. I've been in loud, frantic hospitals.
Is there much violence? Like in prisons, is there much violence in them?
A little bit, yeah. Like, I remember when I was in Averley Park, I was having a private discussion with one of the nurses, and we were in like a public TV lounge. So it was a public room, and this bloke come in and he said, if you're talking in here, you need to have this private conversation. Elsewhere, I'm watching TV. And I said to him, I says, if you were in this room and I was having a private conversation, you were watching TV, I wouldn't be in this room having a private conversation. And he went, oh, fuck you, and wandered off. And it looked like he was going to make a brew. So I don't know, like, you know, in hospitals, you get like these, like when you go camping, you get those canteens where, you know, like the flasks.
Right, aye.
So they don't put boiling hot water out, because obviously you're in a mental health hospital, you know, like,
aye.
Probably a bit of a safety hazard, you know what I mean? And I seen this lad putting hot water in a cup, he's putting sugar in the cup, and I'm thinking, he's not meant to brew. I've seen no tea bag or coffee going to this, and I'm like, this bloke I'm stood speaking to is still talking to me, and I'm like, talking half to him, paying half attention, but my eyes are sort of focused on this bloke. And a lad from Manchester, AK-47 tattooed down his head, called himself AK. Like, I spoke to him on a different day. He was lovely. Do you know what I mean? He just come up to us and he chucked this, like, what he thought was boiling hot water in my face with sugar. It was just hot enough to cause you mild discomfort. Do you know what I mean? Like you felt like, whoa, like that. And I jump up and I'm scrapping with people. And then, like, next thing you know, you're getting liquid lorazepam. So you're getting, like, an injection in the back of your leg or in your arse cheek. And they put, like, a beanbag behind you and you just...
Does it just put you straight out of that stuff?
Sleep, yeah, and you wake up in your bedroom with, like, ward staff watching you. And I've had that... I've had that happen probably most times I've been sectioned, to be honest.
Because I know that not everyone who's been sectioned, you'd be able to tell.
Yeah.
You don't seem like someone who would be in one of them scenarios. Because you, again, like I'm not saying that you'd be disrespectful if you are, but you come across very well. You can clearly tell you've got an understanding, on a deeper level than a lot of people who you think maybe.
I think, like, I notice that when I go in these hospitals, and staff notice that, like, do you know, I've come to discharge dates where you go to a discharge meeting in hospital and they essentially bring you in to ask your opinion on how you feel, you know, are you ready to go back out there? Sometimes it's after a couple of months, sometimes it's after a couple of weeks, just depending on how you've been on the ward. And at times I've been like, I'm not ready to go back out there because my head's still cabbage. Like, I'm thinking frantically, I'm thinking 1,000 miles an hour. But ultimately, because I'm self-aware and I'm conscious of my own thoughts and I'm not beneath my own way of thinking, then they'll be like, oh, you are ready to go. Whereas some people in there, you know, like, you think, I think it goes on how you act with others in there. Like, I'm always quite respectful and polite with people. You know, if I can help someone, I will help them. Like, I've seen lads, like, in these hospitals getting bullied. Like in Foss Park, for instance, there was a lad there, learning difficulties, lovely lad, and he was getting bullied by these two lads. And I just went over, I said, just leave him alone. If you've got a problem, you know, like, we'll have it out, but you leave him alone because he's a nice lad. You know, he's 40-year-old, he's got learning difficulties, and he's sweet as anything. And I think because I'm conscious of stuff like that, and I'm conscious of my own way of thinking, and I portray myself quite well, doesn't necessarily mean I'm not ill. Mm-hmm. I'm just quite self-aware, do you know what I mean? So then I end up getting discharged from hospitals maybe when I'm not ready, and I've ended up a bit like a revolving patient in these places. Like, I go out, I come back in, I go out, I come back in. Whereas since, like, I've started on the positive stuff, like exercising, fighting, and cutting all the badness and toxicity out of my life, I'm able to process stuff, and now I'm all right. I wouldn't say I was depressed anymore.
Because I listened to a podcast, I think it was recently, with MMA fighter Tom Aspinall, and he talks about fear, and he talks about, like, a lot of people never want to say that they're scared in fights and stuff, and he's on about he's always been fearful, but he's done it anyway, and I quite admire that. Like, so it's almost like having the understanding or the self-awareness, but still going through with it. And because of someone like you, who's clearly, like I say, a respectable bloke, mate, and it's like, when you did the not so positive stuff in your life, how did you feel doing them? Because obviously you know it's wrong. You're not someone who doesn't understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you feel immoral. Like, do you know, like, I spent nights, like, causing myself no ends of anxiety, because, like, my anxiety was always caused by like going to sleep of a night time and bang, wide awake, thinking about everything I've done. Like, sometimes even up until about a year ago, things used to play on my mind all the time. I think back to, like, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. What if someone who I've done this to comes back? Or what happens if, or how did I make that person feel? And I think that in itself fueled the addiction even more, because I didn't want to feel like that. I wanted to shut it off. So then I carried on and I carried on and I carried on. Mm-hmm. And it was this vicious cycle going round and round.
Do you ever crave that life? Do you ever want to do it again? I know that sounds like
No, it doesn't. So I reckon if I could, I'm not going to lie, if I could do a drug and have no consequences to the action, and it wasn't going to cause anyone any harm, and it wasn't going to cause me any harm, I wasn't going to go all paranoid, and I was just going to get that feeling, I probably would. Mm-hmm. Do I think it's a positive thing to do? No. Like, that's just something, like, I remember this is the way your brain tricks you. So one's too much and 1,000's not enough. And I'll always remember that time that one was sound. I could just go and have one and how it made me feel. But then now I constantly remind myself of all the disgusting things I've done on it, the way it made me feel, the paranoia, the things I've done, the upset I've caused, the bridges I've burnt, the bridges I've rebuilt and burnt again. And just, I know I've got 1,000 relapses left in me, but I've got no recovery left. But this is it. So like I need stay focused, and I need stay right.
Exactly, mate. And that's why, again, even coming on here and sharing this story, mate, I appreciate it, mate, because again, it's like I wanted to hold you accountable as well, because I want to see you look back at this in the year and again, fucking hell, I did it. I kept going. I kept fighting. Yeah. Look at all them fights I had since I sport ads. Look at it. Do you know, that's what I want. I want to fucking see that. Of course you do. Do you know what I mean? What would you say, Matthew, is the worst thing you'd done? Is anything that you're sitting there thinking, that was my biggest regret, like?
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily, like, I did, like, I burgled my mum's house when she's been on holiday. I've stolen money off my mum. I've caused no end of stress to her. That's something I regret. Do you know, like, when I were out on the streets and like, I was living in Kendal in Cumbria and I was selling coke and I was selling weed. And some lad owed me 200 quid and, like, not a lot of money, really, not a substantial amount of money. And I smashed his teeth out with a knuckle duster. And now, do you know, like, that's caused someone trauma and taken teeth out of someone's mouth and caused them no end of suffering. That's not fucking, I don't know why I'm laughing. No, but
just the way you said it, like taking teeth out of someone's mouth, just like, as you do. No, it's bad.
It's mad. Like, I look back at things like that and I think, what a fucking horrible person. And, like, I was always picking up weapons when I was, do you know, like, if I felt like I go up against 2 or 3 people, but I pick up a weapon. And I've been fighting for as long as I can remember, but fighting everything.
So have you made a lot of enemies? Like,
over the years, I've run up, like, debts. I've caused people stress. I've done bad things. Yeah, I would say I've probably got a few enemies, but, like, as I did me 12 steps, and part of me 12 steps was to make, like, a moral inventory of, like, all the bad things I've done to myself, to other people, and try and make amends to them. So I, like, slowly started making my way down them lists, whether it's, like, relationships, like, you know, like, I've been in relationships and I've not been the kindest to women. I've not been the nicest. I've not been the most respectful. So I try and make amends for that. Yeah. I've gone out and I've hurt people that I love. I've hurt people that I would consider still close to, and trying to make amends with people, that don't know me and don't know that I've done something to them, but I've done it, and, you know I've done it to them, like burgling people's houses, writing letters and stuff like that. I'd probably say the worst thing I've ever done is take my sister's childhood away from her. Like, my mum and dad were that focused on me, and what I was up to and where I was and what I was doing. Like, my mum spent nights in her house crying, and my sister at such a young age was there to comfort her, and my sister didn't really get a look in. And as a result of that, that's caused my sister mental health problems. And like I said at the start of this, my sister's, like, one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet. Like, she's such a lovely, caring person. And for me to have had an impact on her childhood the way I did, because I know, like, we talk about it, and she goes to therapy, and
I'm sure the thing is, I'm sure they understand how remorseful you are.
Yeah, of course.
But, like, I hope that they even watch this, because it might show even their brother or their son in another light. Because do you know what I mean? Like, I've had family members watch the conversations I've had, and they're like, fucking hell, like, it's mad to hear you speak that way, and because, I mean, I've said it on a million podcasts now, but how many times do you not have your phone and just speak to someone? It's almost like the real you just comes out. It's mad, isn't it?
It's the authentic you.
It's mad, isn't it? Because there's no escape. You cannot run away now. I cannot run anywhere. It's just me and you talking to each other. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, fucking hell, like, and it's been, even this conversation has been a lovely conversation because it just flowed. Obviously, I don't script now anyway, as I said before we come on, but you mentioned one thing that I did. You mentioned something earlier on, and you said you used to do shop runs.
Yeah.
What's that?
I used to go shoplifting around, like, beers, or, like, even they'd send me to the shop, go and get a pack of Rizzlers, go get this, go get that, and, like, they give me a little shopping list, and I go and do that. Or, like, if we run out of money, it'd be like, Matty, you know, you're young, if you get arrested and you go and steal all these bottles of cider, nothing will happen to you. And I'm walking in shops, you know, like, taking things out of shop, and that become that then become a force of habit, you know what I mean? Like just going in shops and helping myself. And
Did you ever get a buzz from that, or was that just a necessary thing?
yeah, but I more got a buzz when I was being chased down the street by security, and I was able to shout back some shit, and then the police are coming, and I'm like, I think every time I've ever been arrested, I end up having fights with the police, and I think that was my problem with authority. Whereas, like they've always like I'm quite now to look at, like you said, like well mannered and I talk well and that. But I used to love giving people shit, like just screaming like absurdities at people and just being a dickhead. I used to get a buzz off that. Like I did, running down the street, 3-litre bottles of cider, going, fuck off, you dickhead. You know what I mean? Like as a kid, I used to feel like the man. Now I look back, I think, fucking hell, like what were you doing?
Good hell, mate. How did you find God?
So I found God in rehab. I went to rehab because I realised I couldn't fix the problem on my own. I couldn't, like, I'd do months off drugs and then I'd always fall back into the same routine because I always lied to myself. I was always like, oh, one will be all right. And then once I took one, it's like it sets off this allergic reaction where I crave more and more and more and more and more. And it's like at first, before you take it, they call it an obsession. So you're obsessing over it. Once you have it, it's a craving. You need it. You know, like once you put that first one in your body, that's it. Like for me, that's whether it's a drink, whether it's a drug. Once I have one, I crave it and I need more.
Because you've kind of fulfilled the loop, haven't you? So you've given yourself that feedback of...
Yeah, it's that endless loop. And I went to rehab and at first they were like, they were talking about higher power. They talked about God. And the word God scared me. I was like, nah. I used to think if there was a God, none of this bad stuff would have happened to me. Like, how could it have happened? I now realise, like, someone said to me, if you don't believe in God, just believe in good, orderly direction. Do good things and good things will happen. And I thought, oh, fucking hell, well, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, I can get behind that. So I started going to my classes in rehab and doing bits and bobs. And I was reading through the book and I'm doing my 12 steps. And the word God keeps popping up. And I thought, do you know what? Like, I've been quite close-minded to a lot of stuff in my life. Like, like if I don't believe in something or I'm not open to that conversation, I just shut off and not possible. So I thought, right, the first steps, to admit you're powerless to a drug or powerless to alcohol, and I am powerless, I can't do it on my own, and it's to look to that higher power to get you through it. And I thought, well, it's worked for people in the past, like maybe I'll just start going to church and I'll be a bit more open-minded and willing, like the book says I need to be, and I'll do that and maybe it'll help. And I started praying, I started meditating, I started going to church on a Sunday, and I found the community was amazing. Like I always thought I'd be judged if I went into a church or I'd set on fire or something, you know what I mean? But like ultimately I went in there and it's like people weren't looking at, like people comment on my tattoos or, like, did they not hurt and stuff like that, but no one was judgmental. I started listening to the services and I started going home and praying. I started realising different things were happening in my life. Now I don't know whether it was different things because I was just doing good and good things were happening, or I was going away and praying and it was working. So for me, like the more I dwelled into it and the more I sat in church and the more I spoke to people about it, the more I felt at home. And then there's a bloke called Graham Seed from Borough, amazing bloke, but like he lived his life drugs, and he died. And on the bed they took his mum and like a vicar to see him, and they said like if shut off his life support, and they said a prayer for him, and he opened his eyes. And the guy's completely changed his life. Like he's like he sees himself as like this vessel, like to spread the message of of God. And he come to do. Like,
so he didn't die.
Pardon?
Did he die?
He died.
Oh, all right. You're right.
He was on life support, and they went to turn his machine off, and he opened his eyes, and he was alive. And he come to do a share up at the church I was going to, and to share about his experience. And there was loads of us sat there, and he said, "Look, there's 14 of you in this room that I'm gonna say a prayer for. Close your eyes." We all closed our eyes, and he says, "Look, there's 14 of you in this room that need to stand up," and I'm gonna say stand up, and he said stand up, and it was like I had no. Might sound stupid to people saying it, and I don't care whether people believe me or not, because like for me this actually happened. I felt forced to stand up, like not through like what he was saying, just like compelled to stand up. And then when we opened our eyes, there was exactly 14 of us stood up, and that for me was like a very spiritual experience. And from then I was like, oh, like I like this, you know what I mean? Like I feel good, I'm doing good things. I'm going home, I'm praying, I'm leaving everything up to God. Like now I might not understand all this stuff, but I see it as part of God's plan. So now when I reflect on my life, I don't see all this. Obviously, I know it's a traumatic event, and I see all this bad stuff, and I see all these bad things that have happened to me, and I see these journeys I've been on, and things that, you know, most people would change. But obviously, somewhere down the line in my head now, I see that as it's God's plan. I don't know what's going to happen in the future for me, but everything I have been through has forged me into this person I am, whatever I am.
Well, everything you've done in your life leads you to the point that
you've done it. You know what I mean?
So...
And it's made, I'm not going to lie, it's made me a resilient person. You know, it's made me question myself at times. It's taken me to the depths of hell, and it's took me back up. Like that saying Mike Tyson says, you'll never know how much violence it's took to make me this gentle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that resonates with me. Do you know, like all this violence and all this horrible, atrocious shit that's happened to me in my life, I see it as it's part of the plan. I don't know what the plan is, but it's part of it.
Fucking love it, mate. Plans going forward, mate? Obviously, I know you want to get more into the fighting and get this. What is your... I know you don't know the plan. What do you want to happen? What would you like to see?
I started fighting a year ago just for a hobby. I threw myself into it like I was fighting every month, and then I got signed by BKB. Now, like I say, I'm not a technical boxer. I know I'm not the best fighter in the world. There's areas I need to work on, and I'm always wanting to improve. So, you know, I've took a few glove fights coming up. I've got one next Saturday in Durham. I've got one the week after on a 4-ounce glove show for a title, which is like hybrid boxing, so it's like bare knuckle, but, you know, hopefully less cuts. But my plan going forward is just to cement myself in what I'm doing. I enjoy it. And I don't necessarily do it to win or lose. I do it because I enjoy the lifestyle it gives me, you know, like going and training. Like since my fight with Alex Wilson, I've been training non-stop, and I'm putting in actual graft. Like I went training with Vennis, and he said, you know, Matthew, like you are tough, and like, you know, people know if they're going to have a fight with you, like it's either going one way, you're getting knocked out, or they're getting knocked out. But imagine what you'd be like if you actually took it seriously and trained, and, you know, you went training twice a day, or you trained every day of the week, but did training that's going to benefit you, you know, like, so now I go boxing, I do boxing lessons, I do strength and conditioning, I go on runs, and it's given me a lifestyle that I love. So going forward, my plan is I don't know when I'm next back on BKB, but my plan is get these glove fights over and done with, get some more experience, you know, fighting, learn to box a bit better, and cement myself for my future. Like I'm 29, you know, like I've got a few years in me. Like I like having a scrap. I do it because I enjoy it. And now, you know, buckle down, take it seriously, and hopefully progress with it. You know what I mean? Get my contract extended.
Matthew, well, I want to wish you the best of luck in the future with that, mate. I want to thank you for coming on. I think this pod is going to fly. Yeah, it's been one of the best conversations I've had.
Thank you.
And I will say that we've done 120 episodes.
Nice.
It's been mint. It's been really good. And I think a lot of people will benefit a lot from watching this. And if they actually understand that regardless of the trauma, whatever bullshit that you go through as a kid, doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to turn out that person. Because a lot of people think they've gone through shit, oh, well, fuck it, then I'll just do whatever.
I think like there's never a point in life where it's too late to change the way you go in. And I will say this, anyone listening to this, whether you're suffering with mental health, you know, like if you've been abused, you've had stuff going on, like talk to people. Like it is really important to talk up, because like you might not necessarily stop it for yourself, or you will stop it for yourself, but you'll stop it for other people. Like going forward, I know by coming out about being abused, that man's never going to abuse anyone again.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's power in that, but also like look to fill your time with things that are meaningful, you know, like going out and creating new memories, going out and making good friends, like getting yourself involved in something that's a positive impact on your life, because it's quite easy to drown, but it's quite easy to stay afloat and pull yourself out the water as well.
Well, this is why, in a way, and again, no one wants to be the guinea pig, but you're a vessel, because I mean, look at anything. If the doctor tells you you've got cancer, you're going to probably stop smoking.
Yeah.
It always takes something bad for something good to happen all the time, doesn't it? So it's like with you, unfortunately, again, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And again, I can only apologise for what you've been through, because that is the worst thing I've heard in person. However, because you've went through it, there's going to be thousands of people who won't, as you've said. And I think as much as it's horrible that the fact that it was you that's gone through it, mate, there's still something positive to have. I know it's fucking horrible to say that, but
it's like if like this message reaches one person and it helps one person, that's still one person it's helped, and that to me means more than anything. You know what I mean? Like, ultimately, like, life is about helping others and seeing people progress, and we're always developing as characters and developing as human beings. You know, like I'm on a self-discovery journey, and it's never going to end, really. You know, you're always going to discover new parts of yourself, and I just think, like, people need to, like, you know, realize that, like, your trauma doesn't define you. It might be a good reason, you know, for what you're doing, but it doesn't define who you are, and it shouldn't dictate your future.
Matthew, thank you so much, bro.
Thank
It
you
means a
very
lot,
much for having
mate.
me
Thank
on.
you, bro. So if you've enjoyed this conversation and you like things like this, make sure you click up there and watch this episode.